Okay. Hello, class. Sorry, I didn't want to film like this, but I felt like I had to. Obviously, I never could have anticipated all this happening, but I just wanted to be like direct with all of you. Yes, the rumors are true. I did kidnap a girl from Kansas and her little dog, and I just want to take full accountability for that. But I also think that cancel culture has gotten way out of hand, and there are a lot of rumors going around about me right now and my character that are just not true. And if there's one thing that Reddit has taught me, it's that sometimes we need to hear both sides of the story, especially if one side of the story involves catchy show tunes sung by Broadway legends Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel. Today, I wanted to talk about Wicked, the hit Broadway musical that premiered in 2003 and has since gone on as one of the most commercially successful and longest-running Broadway shows of all time. Wicked the musical is very loosely based on Gregory Maguire's 1995 novel Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, which is also loosely based, of course, on the universe established by the L. Frank Baum novels and MGM's production of The Wizard of Oz. It details the previously unknown origins of the Wicked Witch of the West, reframing the cartoonish and, let's be real, anti-Semitic depiction of the witch known throughout pop culture, and instead presents a misunderstood woman who fights for justice, loves her friends, and sings in an incredible 3-octave range. Folks, I don't know if you could tell just by looking at me, but I love Wicked. I've loved musical theater ever since I was a kid. I mean, it's in my blood. Basically, every year my mom would take me to see a musical that was either touring near us, or sometimes we would even go to see a show on Broadway. And the very first musical my mom took me to see was the first national tour of Wicked in 2007. Well, actually, technically, the first musical my mom took me to was The Lion King when I was 3, but I wasn't sentient yet. Sorry, Mom, that doesn't count. When 11-year-old me went to the Hippodrome Theater and saw Wicked for the first time, it changed me. For good. Because of course it did. It's a story about the complexities and power of female friendship, the harm of bigotry and corruption, and just a little bit about eco-terrorism. Even though I've actually only seen the live stage production that one time, over the years I have listened to the cast recordings relentlessly. When I'm going through a depressive episode, there are really only certain types of content I find that can really help me get out of it. For instance, I really like watching clips from shark-based horror movies. Have you ever seen 47 Meters Down? No, never will, too scary. But you best believe I've watched every trailer and clip on YouTube available. I also really enjoy comparing and contrasting all of the performances from people who have played the lead characters over the years, how they deliver classic lines differently.
Pink goes good with green.
Pink goes good with green.
The riffs at the end of Defying Gravity. Wait, why was that actually kind of good? They're all great, of course, but if you're asking me, the best Elphaba is Jessica Vosk, no question. And the best Glinda is still Kristen Chenoweth, actually, followed closely by Brittany Johnson. However, the best pairing of Elphaba and Glinda is, of course, Donna Bivino and Ali Mazzi, and I will not be expanding further. I have truly grown up with this musical, and with each new trailer the Wicked movie releases, I've cried. Perhaps because seeing this thing I've loved since childhood finally on the big screen after 20 years of development hell reminds me of my own looming mortality. Or it's just because my heart simply cannot comprehend how Jonathan Bailey can dance through life that hard. Jonathan Bailey was just born to wear tight pants and sing a little show tune, and God bless him for it. I don't know what the title of this video is going to be. I think an appropriate title would be Ashley's increasingly desperate attempt to get on the Wicked movie PR list. I know I've missed the boat for the first movie at this point, but hey, there is still part 2. To be more specific as to what you all could expect from this video, I just wanted to talk about the stage musical, The Good, The Bad, The Wizard, and I. So yes, full spoilers for the stage musical, probably plenty of spoilers for the films, but for context, the entire Broadway production is 2 hours and 20 minutes, plus an intermission. Rumor has it the first movie, which just covers Act 1, is 2 hours and 40 minutes long. So I very much believe that the movies will be their own thing, worthy of analysis completely on their own, which hey, maybe when both the films are out, that's something we can return to. I don't know. Or we can just pretend that this video never happened if it flops. I keep falling behind my teleprompter and having to take my glove off, and then my fingers get stuck on my glove. Being a YouTuber is really hard. So, without further ado, let's talk about Wicked and everything that happened before Dorothy dropped in.
Wait. Why am I not green right now?
Oh, right. It's because we're talking about today's sponsor, Bombas.
Y'all, I am so excited to be working with Bombas again. It's no secret, I'm a big fan, have been for many years now. Every Bombas item is just always designed for maximum comfort. That means no itchy tags on their t-shirts and no annoying seam lines on their socks or underwear. I was actually eyeing a couple pairs of socks before I even knew this sponsorship was happening. It was, you guessed it, the Bombas Wicked collection. I mean, you know I had to. I had actually never tried their quarter style socks up until this point, but I'm happy to report they are just as comfortable as my compression socks, my running socks, except they're super lightweight. And yeah, they're pink and green, which is very important to me at the moment. I also just love working with Bombas because they are a purpose-driven brand. They make the #1, #2, and #3 most requested items in homeless shelters. And for every item you purchase, one item is donated. Head to bombas.com/Ashley Norton and use my code Ashley Norton for 20% off your first purchase. Thank you again to Bombas for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it.
The musical begins much like how The Wizard of Oz ends. The Wicked Witch of the West is dead. I think you should all know that the night the Queen of England died in 2022, the director of Wicked on the West End came out to give this disclaimer.
As many of you are no doubt aware, Her Majesty the Queen sadly passed away earlier this afternoon, and we send deepest condolences to her family. At the respective Buckingham Palace, all shows are continuing to perform this evening. Therefore, tonight's show will be performed as usual and as written. There will be a minute's silence at the end of the curtain call, apologies, as a mark of respect. Thank you and enjoy the show.
He said that because the show opens like this. So anyways, the Wicked Witch of the West is dead, and then out comes Glinda in her magic floating bubble, the Oz version of a segue. When someone from the crowd asks, "But wait, Glinda, weren't you friends with the Wicked Witch of the West?" And Glinda says, "Well, it depends what you mean by friend."
Yes. Well, it depends what you mean by friend.
Which, you know, could mean nothing. You see, they met in college, which could mean nothing. We then flash back to Elphaba arriving at Shiz University. Elphaba discovers that despite being green, she kind of is that girl, and she has super strong magical powers that if she grows, could one day help her meet the wizard, the most powerful sorcerer in the land. If she works hard, maybe one day she could be accepted by society, revered even, and maybe the wizard could get rid of her green skin and give her a BBL. I mean, the possibilities are endless. Elphaba and Galinda, she's Galinda in the first act, they hold hands and fight. There's this feeling so sudden and new, they felt the moment they laid eyes on one another.
Loathing. Unadulterated loathing.
Sure, if that's what you want to call it. Then Elphaba and Discount Flynn writer Fiyero hold hands and fight. So naturally, Elphaba also loves him. She loves him. Even though Fiyero is dating Galinda, and Elphaba, I don't know if you can tell by the green skin or whatever, she's not like other girls. Galinda also has this annoying little incest boy. Incest? No. Galinda also has this annoying little incel, Bach, who follows her around all day. To distract Bach from his crush on Galinda, Galinda asks Bach to date Elphaba's younger, disabled sister, Nessa. But enough of that boring romance stuff, it is time to get to the very serious political plot of this musical. Dr. Dillamond, their furry professor, or as he calls it, their token goat, this musical was written in 2003, I don't know, explains that animals used to be a much more prominent part of Oz society. But during the Great Drought, people were searching for someone to blame, a scapegoat, if you would. When Dr. Dillamond flips his board over, he sees that someone has written, "Animals should be seen, not heard." Elphaba, because she too is no stranger to prejudice, stays with Dr. Dillamond, who explains that this isn't just words on a chalkboard. Across all of Oz, he's hearing the rumors that animals are banned from teaching, that they're losing their ability to speak, both figuratively and literally. Elphaba says, well, surely the wizard, our government, would put a stop to this. The government would never let anything bad happen to a minority group. Meanwhile, eventually, Galinda and Elphaba grow to understand one another and become friends, which means we get the mandatory Emma makeover scene because this musical was made in the early 2000s. I can't stress this enough. That being said, the song Galinda sings during this part is delightful. I love watching new Glindas sing popular because at this point, they've all pretty much given up on singing the song in character. Instead, the Glinda actress's main goal in the song is to try their hardest to make the Elphaba actor they're playing with break character, and they go about this in increasingly chaotic ways.
This is never gonna work.
Elfie, you mustn't think that way anymore! Your whole life is about to change!
It's one of those things that can be kind of cringy watching a bootleg of it, but when you're there in the theater, this song is a huge crowd pleaser. It's also, importantly, the first time that both Galinda and Elphaba realize that Elphaba is beautiful, just the way that she is. Elphaba then finally gets her chance to meet the wizard, and who does she take? But her best gal pal, Galinda. Sorry, Glinda. Galinda changed her name to Glinda in solidarity with the animals being sent away to the farmlands. She's an ally now. Once Glinda and Elphaba meet the wizard, they realize that he's just like some guy. And if that wasn't bad enough, the wizard is also the one who's been taking the animals' rights away and forcing them not to speak, which, Elphaba, sweetie, he's the guy in power. I feel like we shouldn't be this shocked by this. We could have put these pieces together. On top of that, the wizard has no real magical powers of his own. He needs Elphaba and Glinda's help to rule over Oz and, enslave some animals. Glinda is like, you know what? Sure. I'm nothing if not a centrist, okay? Elphaba is like, no, I think I'm gonna escape. I'm gonna escape now. But she knows too much. The wizard won't just let her get away. After barricading herself and Glinda in the attic, Elphaba says that something has changed within her. Something is not the same. She's through with playing by the rules of someone else's game, and she is going to try defying gravity. Even though Elphaba has been working her whole life to assimilate, gain acceptance, she realizes that she can't do that, and she can't want to do that if that means sacrificing her values. Instead, Elphaba is going to run away and spend the rest of her life fighting for the animals. She says, Glinda, come with me. Together, we'd be unstoppable, babes. Glinda does think about it for a moment, but then Glinda says, nah, I think I'm actually good here. Maybe I can, fix the system by working within the system or something. I'm sure. Oddly enough, Glinda and Elphaba aren't really mad at each other for this decision, even though it seems like their morals at this point are fundamentally at odds. But hey, remember, they're besties. They can get through anything. So then, in the most absolutely breathtaking moment in the entire show, Elphaba flies through the sky as she sings some of the most insane riffs you've ever heard performed 8 times a week. It is my curse to be obsessed with this song and not be able to sing even a single note of it successfully. Although I swear it wasn't that bad when I did it earlier. No. Defying Gravity is what Let It Go from Frozen wishes that it was, Idina Menzel and all. Also, one of my absolute dreams is to see what nerds like me call a no-fly show. Let me explain what a no-fly show is. This is live theater. Special effects don't work right all the time. Occasionally, when there's an issue with the mechanism that lifts Elphaba, the Elphaba actress has to sing the final riff just standing on stage. And immediately, the surrounding cast just have to fall to the ground to sort of project the illusion that Elphaba is still way up above them. Not that Elphabas aren't giving it 100% every time, but that Elphaba has to really bring the energy in her performance to communicate to the audience that she is flying up in the air right now. I imagine seeing a no-fly show is like when a Disneyland ride breaks down and the lights go on and the guests have to walk through the attraction to get out. Also something I really want to see, but that's besides the point. I just think there's something kind of magical, dare I say,
about how these actors have to immediately shift the choreography without giving away to the audience that something has gone wrong. Dang, guys, I need to see Wicked again. Then we get to Act 2, which is, unfortunately, in my opinion, much weaker than the first act. Not that I don't love it, but when I explain the plot to you, y'all are gonna be like, yeah. We see that Glinda is now the Good Witch, a puppet for the wizard's evil regime. Fiyero has become a reluctant wizard cop, and the two are engaged because, you know, they're straight and hot, and why wouldn't they be? Meanwhile, Elphaba is still a fugitive animal rights activist, although it is not clear exactly what she's been up to this whole time to help the animals, because the only difference we see is that she has a smoky eye that she didn't have in Act 1. Elphaba then visits her sister, Nessarose, who has become, let's just say, an evil dictator because her boyfriend Bach is still not over his unrequited crush on Glinda. Ladies, know your worth. No man is worth becoming an evil dictator over. When Nessa tries to cast a love spell on Bach, she nearly kills him. And to save Bach's life, Elphaba turns Bach into the Tin Man, because remember, this is a Wizard of Oz prequel. When Bach wakes up and says, wait, why do I just look like I bathed in Jaclyn Hill's champagne pop? Nessa's like, oh yeah, that was Elphaba. Yeah, totally Elphaba's fault, not mine. Anyways, I'm the Wicked Witch of the East now. Elphaba then goes back to Oz to try and free the wizard's monkeys, but is, immediately caught by the wizard himself. The wizard is like, yeah, I may be a bad, talentless flop who started a race war in order to maintain my own power, but Elphaba, I get public validation. And if you came back to my side, you could get some of that too. And for a second, Elphaba's like, yeah, maybe I haven't actually learned anything from Act 1. Maybe I should just give up my morals and work with the oppressors. Oh wait, is that Dr. Dillamond? Talk, Valentina.
Dr. Dillamond, don't you remember me?
Okay, yeah, I'm back to fully hating you, wizard. You suck. Then comes wizard cop Himbo Fiyero himself, who is secretly still a good guy, and turns on the wizard. Just then, Glinda also runs in and sees her old pal Elphaba.
Elfie! Thank God you're alive.
And Fiyero was like, yeah, so, I'm actually gonna go right now. Glinda, we may be engaged, but I'm actually in love with your best friend, and we're gonna run away right now and f in a bog. They also have a perfect opportunity to kill the wizard right now, Elphaba's supposed goal, but no. They gotta have bog sex right now. Elphaba sings a sexy song about how she just stole her best friend's man and in a bog. Like, girl, maybe give it 5 minutes. Meanwhile, because they left the wizard fully alive, the wizard is like, maybe if we drop a house on Elphaba's sister, we'll be able to coax Elphaba out of hiding and get her. She's a real threat to the regime, even though, the most political action Elphaba has done so far is whatever she did in that bog. So, the Wizard of Oz plot happens. Glinda sends Dorothy down the yellow brick road wearing her best friend's dead sister's shoes. I mean, Elphaba did just steal her man, so I guess I can't blame Glinda for being a little petty. That's dark, right? Elphaba and Glinda then have a cat fight over Fiyero, and Fiyero, ever the himbo, immediately sacrifices himself and gets captured. So much for that guy, huh? To save Fiyero, Elphaba must absolutely belt her heart out, and Elphaba turns Fiyero into the Scarecrow so that he'll never die. Then evil Diet Coke can Bach wrangles up his local book club to storm Elphaba's castle. Elphaba has, of course, kidnapped Dorothy and Toto at this point because she's just gotta get her hands on those shoes. You know how much those would go for on Depop? But Glinda sneaks into the castle to try and warn Elphaba that a mob is coming to kill her. And that's when Elphaba realizes that she's limited. She could never enact the political change that she wanted. But Glinda, you can fix this evil regime, again, from the inside. Then Glinda and Elphaba sing the song For Good, which, yes, does make me cry every time I listen to it. This song is just these two women who've grown up together, hated each other, loved each other, looking at each other's faces for the last time. And they realize in that moment that they've changed each other for good, both in the sense that they've been changed for the better, but that they've also been changed forever. Oh my God. The lyricism in Wicked is not always great, but when it's good, okay? And also, throughout this musical, Glinda's part has always demanded a higher vocal register. Although her voice does get progressively lower throughout the second act, Glinda has always taken the higher harmony to Elphaba's lower harmony. But once they harmonize about how they've changed each other, Glinda takes the lower harmony and Elphaba takes the higher harmony.
Steven Schwartz, you really got me there. As the mob comes in to kill Elphaba, Elphaba tells Glinda to hide and not tell anyone the truth. Don't try to explain how Elphaba was actually good this whole time. Just let people think that Elphaba was evil and that evil is gone now. So the mob comes in and melts Elphaba, as you do, leaving Glinda to discover that her one true friend in the world has been brutally murdered, along with her ex-fiancé. And the entire world thinks that they were both evil masterminds. But it turns out that Elphaba and Fiyero aren't dead. I mean, why would throwing water kill her? That doesn't make sense. But they've decided that they're going to leave Oz forever. What about the animals Elphaba wanted to supposedly save this whole time? I'm sure Glinda can take care of that. I love describing just the plots to commercially successful musicals because for the most part, the nuances of the plot really don't hold up that well because the plot is just secondary to the razzle-dazzle of the music, the sets, the costumes, the divas belting their hearts out on stage. And Wicked is no exception. There's a reason the show still sells out on Broadway today. The production value is honestly unmatched. There's a giant animatronic dragon on top of the stage the entire time that no one acknowledges. They didn't have to put that in there, but it's there. There are portions where the monkeys fly out into the audience. There is also the incredible puppet the wizard uses. It's only on stage for a few short scenes, but I just want to stick my head in it a la Five Nights at Freddy's, you know? The costumes also all have this incredibly timeless sort of steampunk future silhouettes, but unlike traditional steampunk, the colors are bold, vivid. It feels like the Wicked costumes were very much a precursor to the Hunger Games capital aesthetic, and the costumes also all add to the story, as all good costumes do. I love how in the scene where Elphaba and Glinda meet, Glinda is in all white, Elphaba is in all blue, and the ensemble are wearing blue and white. Then later on when Glinda and Elphaba become friends, Elphaba is wearing a white top with her blue skirt. Every detail of the set and costumes has clearly just had so much thought and love poured into them. I'll be honest, there are some forgettable tracks in Wicked. No matter how many times I listen to the soundtrack, if you ask me to sing anything the wizard sings, those songs feel like they were written just so that people who were still in line for the bathroom or the bar at intermission wouldn't miss any of the actual exciting stuff, you know? But the songs that hit, my God, do they hit. Popular, The Wizard and I, Defying Gravity, No Good Deed. Thank goodness Glinda's opening in Act 2 is an underrated bop in my mind. It's so heartbreaking. And of course, the best part of this show is watching this friendship between Glinda and Elphaba, how their relationship changes, how their bond persists despite them being at odds with one another for most of the musical. Not to say that there aren't plenty of other musicals that feature female friendships, but female friendships are Wicked's foundation. And it is genuinely so refreshing to see this dynamic celebrated. I think it's also worth talking about how this story is framed. Wicked is, in a broad sense, a prequel. Although I think if we're being technical, it's not entirely a prequel or a prelude to the events of The Wizard of Oz, given that the two stories merge in the second act. But I do think that the huge commercial success of Wicked is at least partially responsible for the widespread proliferation of prequels, particularly when it comes to Disney properties like Solo, Mufasa, or Cruella. While some of these prequels, like Maleficent, have a sort of cult appreciation, the more these kinds of films are made, the more they're seen as lazy cash grabs that unintentionally devalue the original work it's prequeling. Prequeling? The reason a lot of these movies don't work, in my opinion, is because they are often overly concerned with shoving as many references and explanations for the original film into the prequel, to the point where the prequel, the standalone film, is entirely nonsensical. They also tend to take aspects of characters that are just assumed in the original work and give painfully on-the-nose and tragic explanations in the prequel. Oh, you thought Cruella was just an evil lady who wanted a fur coat? Well, what if I told you that she actually hated Dalmatians because they killed her mom? You may think I'm making this video because I'm a nerd who likes Wicked. I'm actually making it because Wicked producer Mark Platt burnt my house down in 2007. It retroactively reduces the agency Cruella had in the original film. She's not a person with desires and attributes anymore. She's a collection of tragic coincidental events that perfectly rationalize her actions. But people aren't rational, and characters meant to portray certain archetypes certainly shouldn't have to be either. Wicked immediately starts off on much stronger footing than these other works, in part because it's not overly concerned with sticking to the canon set by the Wizard of Oz book or movie, or even the Wicked novel this musical is based off of. Not to mention, when you watch The Wizard of Oz as a kid, the witch is just evil, and you don't have to think about it any further. But as an adult, it's not revolutionary to think, Dorothy did kill the Wicked Witch's sister and steal her shoes. Like, that's pretty fucked up, Dorothy. And then the wizard in the book just straight up asks Dorothy to kill the witch for no discernible reason. They change it to give me her broom in the movie, but come on. The wizard wants this little girl to murder. Not to mention, the wizard is ultimately revealed to be a fraud, which makes his demands for this child to act as an assassin even more dubious. Point being, if you think hard enough, the witch's actions already appear justified by the text as it exists. So Wicked doesn't necessarily have to create new motivations for Elphaba in order for her origin to make sense. And not even in the context of sticking to the canon. Just generally, Wicked is not overly concerned with being a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. This is primarily a story about Elphaba's friendship with Glinda, which is not explored at all in the original Wizard of Oz. So it's not contradictory or in line with that story. It's just its own compelling, interesting narrative. Furthermore, in the second act, Elphaba becomes the new scapegoat for the wizard. She is the Wicked Witch of the West, not because she did anything, but because of the wizard's regime, which manufactures a common enemy to distract from his own corruption. It doesn't matter if the Wizard of Oz movie contradicts with the Elphaba we see in the musical. In effect, the Wicked Witch of the West as a concept is a propaganda version of Elphaba the wizard created. And Elphaba explicitly says at the end of the second act that she doesn't want Glinda to redeem her. This cartoonishly evil version of herself can live on if it means that Oz can finally have peace. That being said, I feel like I showed my hand a bit earlier. The show is definitely at its clumsiest when it's trying to be a Wizard of Oz origin story. For instance, in Act 1, after animals are banned from speaking at universities, a comically evil professor comes in and says, "Okay, kids, in today's class, we are going to torture a lion cub." And Elphaba is like, "Hey, I actually don't think that's cool, actually." So she frees the lion cub like the animal rights activist that she is. But in the second act, Bach says that because Elphaba didn't let this lion cub get tortured as a baby, he became a coward, and now the cowardly lion wants her dead.
The lion also has a grievance to repay. The truth let him fight his own battles. When he was young, he wouldn't be a coward today.
Naturally. The fact that the cowardly lion hates Elphaba because she saved him kind of undermines Elphaba's whole animal activism thing that is supposed to be one of her central motivations. Are we meant to believe that she's actually just some kind of white savior affecting well-intentioned but ultimately harmful advocacy on these animals? Well, I guess she'd be more of a green savior, but you get my point. And I don't know about y'all, but I actually don't need to know that the Tin Man was actually just a nice guy who listened to a little too much Jordan Peterson before The Wizard of Oz. But enough of all that, let's talk about what really matters. Why don't the two pretty ladies kiss even once? I'm so glad you asked. Well, I do think it is for one worth noting that while Glinda and Elphaba's relationship is much less developed in the book, they do kiss. So do Bach and Glinda, actually, but I choose not to accept that part of the book as canon. Gregory Maguire, the author of the Wicked novel, a gay man himself, did not shy away from the many queer elements of the original Oz books and film, and incorporated multiple queer characters into Wicked, although notably this was done with the subtlety still demanded of a book published less than a year after Don't Ask, Don't Tell was legalized in the United States. Now, Elphaba and Glinda, what gives? Well, I do subscribe to the E.M. Forster's dictum, only connect, but I also live by a lesser-known suggestion of Virginia Woolf's, only suggest. So I know what I believe, but in prose I only suggested a little bit about the Tendress, even once when they shared a bed in an inn. That might have grown up between them. The musical based on Wicked, called, perhaps you've heard of it, Wicked, stepped even more steeply back from the hints of romantic attraction between the leads, with the effect, some feel, of heightening the possibility of what remained unsaid. Gregory Maguire really hit the nail on the head with that one, because despite whatever straight propaganda we're given in this musical, I will not fall for it. And they truly only have themselves to blame for constructing a musical where one of the central plot lines involves the pitfalls of a propaganda machine. They did it to themselves. The central relationship in Wicked the musical is the relationship between these two women, Glinda and Elphaba. At the beginning of the show, we see these two characters whose personalities are seemingly at complete odds with one another. Elphaba is a snarky, introspective outcast, while Glinda is a hyperfemme, bubbly, popular girl. What could these two women have in common? Well, they do have their extreme hatred for one another, and there's a strange exhilaration in such total detestation.
My pulse is rushing, my head is reeling, my face is flushing. What is this feeling?
They don't just dislike one another. There is a passion there, a feeling neither of them have felt before.
And I will be loathing you my whole life.
We already have a strong foundation for enemies to lovers just with that song. Then there's Fiyero, the canonical love interest for both of these characters. Fiyero is a handsome prince who's been expelled from every college he's ever been to. He's cool. He's bad. Well, he's bad in the way like every straight guy in your high school musical theater program is bad. You know, he wants to throw a little party, maybe have a little bit of his mom's margarita mix, and bond over everyone's shared trauma of Seussical the musical. I also love how the musical very subtly hints that he is in fact the Scarecrow from Wizard of Oz.
Maybe I'm brainless. Life's more painless for the brainless. Life is flawless when you're thoughtless.
It is so corny, but so delightful. Glinda initially falls in love with Fiyero, not because of any common values they share, but because Glinda sees who she thinks is a perfect guy.
You're perfect. We're perfect together.
Glinda is a character who cares deeply about her image, and this relationship with Fiyero fits perfectly into this one-dimensional image she's created for herself as this popular girl. I'm not exaggerating here. This is truly all the context we're given as to why Glinda is interested in Fiyero in the first place. Elphaba, on the other hand, does not like Fiyero at first on account of him almost accidentally hitting her with his car. Don't be shy, Elphaba, run him over back. But Fiyero doesn't care because he's cool. He doesn't care about anything. When Fiyero helps Elphaba save the lion cub from being tortured, Elphaba's like, whoa, hold on. You say you don't care about stuff, but you just saved this lion cub from being tortured. I think you care like a little bit. I also think, Fiyero, that you might be a little bit depressed, and you're hoping your freakishly tight pants will distract you from that fact. Then Elphaba sings a slow, boring ballad about how Fiyero is again this picture-perfect guy every girl would want. But she's not the picture-perfect girl everyone wants. Once again, Elphaba is focused more so on what Fiyero represents than who he is as a person when she expresses romantic feelings about him. We have specific reasons why Glinda and Elphaba dislike each other and grow to like each other. We are not given that same context when it comes to either of Fiyero's relationships. Also, unlike Glinda and Elphaba, who get an entire number dedicated to their passionate hatred for one another, we really just get that one scene of Fiyero almost hitting Elphaba with his car to show that they're supposed to be enemies turned lovers. Immediately, the stakes of Elphaba and Fiyero possibly reconciling and becoming lovers feels much lower than if we were to see that same turn with Glinda and Elphaba. Even though Glinda's talent is initially discounted by their school principal, Madame Morrible, Elphaba convinces Madame Morrible that Glinda should be in sorcery class with her because through Glinda's scheming, Glinda inadvertently helped Elphaba's sister, who Elphaba deeply cares about. Remember, Glinda set Bok up with Nessa. When Glinda realizes that she got what she wanted, she's in sorcery class, she has the perfect boyfriend, Fiyero, she's not happy.
What is it?
I got what I wanted.
Then what's the matter?
Nothing.
Good. Let's dance.
Why is she not happy? Because before she realized what Elphaba did for her, Glinda played a prank on Elphaba and told her to wear an ugly hat to the dance. When Elphaba arrives at the dance, Glinda realizes that her and Elphaba are the same. They both care about what everyone else thinks of them, but Glinda can't do that anymore. So Glinda joins Elphaba on the dance floor, even with that ugly-ass hat Elphaba's wearing, and starts a heartfelt interpretive dance. Because Elphaba has taught her to care less about the judgment of others, which is how they become friends. In the second act, once Elphaba has run away and Glinda has become a government shill, Glinda once again has everything that she's wanted. She's a powerful witch, she has a handsome fiancé, Fiyero. She's adored by the masses, but even though she tries to manifest her way out of it, Glinda is not happy.
Because happy is what happens when all your dreams come true. Well, isn't it?
In part, this is because she's once again consumed by what others think of her, but also because her friend, Elphaba, isn't by her side, and she doesn't have the love she thought Fiyero could give her. Elphaba, on the other hand, literally comes out of the closet in the second act when she sees her sister, but beyond that, I find Elphaba's arc in the second act much worse than the first, because the second act spends so much time focusing on her relationship with Fiyero. Fiyero ditches Glinda for Elphaba, and despite Elphaba and Glinda being besties, Elphaba has no issues with this. Glinda, heartbroken over Fiyero leaving her, suggests that the wizard threaten Elphaba's sister to get Elphaba to come out of hiding, which then leads to the whole murder via house situation. This is despite Glinda in the previous scene singing about how even though she got what she wanted with her engagement with Fiyero, she was not happy. Elphaba and Glinda then have, the mud wrestling match over Fiyero, and I'm sorry, I just cannot believe that either of these two cared this much about Fiyero to be acting like this, for this to be the driving force in the second act. Even if you were lame and didn't want to make Glinda and Elphaba kiss in the second act, there are just so many other better motivations for both of them than this milquetoast man Fiyero. How about how Elphaba left society to become an anarchist, while Glinda stayed to work with the government she knew was corrupt? Maybe Elphaba, in trying to stop the wizard, comes up with a plan that accidentally puts other citizens of Oz in danger, and Glinda resents her for it. Or Glinda strikes a political deal that protects some animals, but not all of the animals, and Elphaba gets angry at her for that. I realize these suggestions seem a bit grim for a light musical, but in the canon of the musical as it exists today, Fiyero is hung up crucifixion style before presumably being beaten to near death. There are ways to introduce dark themes in a musical and still maintain a generally uplifting tone. Ultimately, Fiero's character and the romance between them feels completely redundant when Act 1 already established far more compelling reasons for Glinda and Elphaba to resent one another and eventually reconcile. Plus, I typically don't spend that much time reminding everyone that my totally platonic gal pal is my friend.
Alfie, now that we're friends. Being my friend, I hope you're happy, my friend. We're just two friends, two good friends, two best friends.
Just saying. This problem, in my eyes at least, with Wicked's romantic relationships stems from the show's general hesitancy with its own politics. This musical was created just 2 years after 9/11, right at the start of the Iraq War, and that political background absolutely framed the tale of political corruption in Wicked. Stephen Schwartz, the composer of the music, said that the wizard in the show has resemblances to George W. Bush and other American politicians, pretending to be doing things for the good of Oz and to be subjugating the animals for the greater good, but it becomes clear through the course of the evening that he is doing these things only to remain in power, and that his scapegoating of the animals, pun intended, is because one sure way to bring people together is to give them a really good enemy. Multiple lines in the show poke at the propaganda that presents Western imperialism as just.
First of all, I can't harbor a fugitive. I am an unelected official.
Is one a crusader or ruthless invader? It's all in which label is able to persist.
It's dreadful, it is, to have a house fall on you. But accidents will happen.
You call this an accident?
Yes. Maybe not an accident.
Well then, what would you call it?
Well, a regime change.
The animals in the show are also a direct allegory for multiple instances in history where one race or minority group is deprived of their rights to make way for a totalitarian regime. Elphaba herself is literally ostracized for the color of her skin and spends the first act attempting to assimilate into this culture that rejects her, only to realize that if she did that, she would only be oppressing other beings in Oz. This show resonates because Elphaba's experience is the lived experience of so many people, whether that be people of color, queer people, or people who otherwise just feel ostracized by the world. While I think there are plenty of positive messages in the show, progressive messages in the show, Wicked is ultimately still beholden to its own commercial appeal. It's radical, but not too radical. Progressive, but not too progressive, which does not make it bad, by the way. I loved the Barbie movie and thought it also had a positive message. It's not particularly nuanced, but its intended audience was a general one, so I think the general positive message works. I also think because of how general the tale of bigotry and self-acceptance is written in Wicked, every person who sees the show can in some way connect it to their own lived experience. Every person has experienced insecurity about feeling different in some way, especially the teenage girls who are, let's be real, the core fan base of this musical. And this musical preaches self-acceptance, which is ultimately a positive thing. What I find interesting about Wicked, however, is that it does hint at a more complex political story. But the way it's written, it comes off as very restrained and intentionally ambiguous. Elphaba exits society entirely for the sake of reaching her activist goals. The wizard has created a totalitarian regime based on lies about animals and Elphaba. There is the groundwork for large-scale systemic conflict within this musical. But when you watch the show, those are not the aspects that resonate, that feel central. Instead, the focus of the show feels like it's the love story between Glinda, Elphaba, and Fiyero, three individuals. And ultimately, Elphaba and Fiyero abandon their cause to go fuck in the bog, leaving their ex-girlfriend to deal with the mess. So how important could that activism have been, really? I think a lot of these hints at more complex political messages are the remnants of the novel by Gregory Maguire I keep mentioning, which is a much more nihilistic political commentary. Yes, that biting political commentary takes place in the universe of a children's fantasy series, but it is dark and complex and taken with full sincerity. Gregory Maguire goes into minute detail of all of these political moments that the musical waters down. Realistically, for all of these elements to complement each other seamlessly, the musical would probably need to be like 4 hours, and that's why I kind of understand the insanity of Jon Chu making this musical 2 full-length feature films, since from what I can tell as someone who hasn't seen the movie yet, he is pulling from the book more and trying to expand the story and go for some Oscar nominations. Speaking of the book, it is a near universal experience. A canon event. To watch this family-friendly musical for the first time at a very young age, only to discover, hey, this is based on an entire very dense book. I should read it to get an expanded version of the musical I love. Only to realize that this book is a grim political satire where activists are stabbed in the neck by evil robots, polyamorous priests attempt to install a theocratic dictatorship, and there's also a tiger puppet orgy, which I cannot explain why, but it's dark. I vividly remember asking my mom if I could read this book because I saw her reading it, and she said absolutely not. So naturally, I waited until my mom left, to read it in secret like the rebel I am, only for the book to immediately open with a very detailed description of baby Elphaba's genitalia after the midwives consider whether they should give Elphaba a good old post-birth abortion because, she's green. Yuck. If you go into either the book Wicked or the musical Wicked, expecting one to be like the other, you will ultimately be very disappointed. Really, you have to treat them like they're both different arcs in a comic book series that share the same universe. Yes, they have characters that overlap, even some story beats, but really they are 2 completely different works. I honestly think it is kind of incredible how they managed to pull such a family-friendly commercial musical out of such a dark and complex fantasy novel. I tip my witch's hat to you, Winnie Holzman. Of course, for how much I love this show, there are certainly aspects of it which I do not like. Things that were not good when they came out, and especially do not play well rewatching the musical as an adult in 2024. One of the most glaring examples being the character of Nessarose and the depiction of her disability. Nessarose, Elphaba's younger sister, is the only principal character of any Broadway show today with a visible disability. Although Broadway has historically been a place that celebrates inclusion, it has had shockingly little in the way of access for disabled patrons or actors. There certainly have been breakthroughs in recent years. The deaf revival of Spring Awakening in 2015 featured a beautiful blend of American Sign Language incorporated with choreography, and speaking from experience, I know it had an impassioned fan base of both hearing and deaf people on Tumblr. Katie Sullivan was the first amputee to ever debut on Broadway in 2022, and she played a huge role not only in the development of her disabled character, but also in ensuring her understudy was also a disabled actor, that the venues were accessible to the performers and the guests. The limited run of Romeo and Juliet featuring Rachel Zegler and Kit Connor includes permanent closed captioning, but it is still a rarity to see a Broadway theater even with a functioning elevator, which is not just needed for people in wheelchairs, by the way. You could have a broken leg or limited mobility for any number of reasons. I still remember when I had that really bad POTS flare-up and I had to go up to the second level to see Bad Cinderella, and I nearly fainted walking up those stairs, which would have been bad Cinderella. Especially because if I'd fainted, I wouldn't have gotten to see one of the greatest musicals ever made.
I'm not your Cinderella. I'm your bad Cinderella. Freak, a rebel, that's all me.
So although these breakthroughs in accessibility have been great, they have also been relatively limited. Since 2003, Nessarose and her wheelchair have been a constant in Broadway. But just because the musical shows that disabled people exist and also enjoy a show tune does not mean that that representation is without critique. For one, despite Nessa being a wheelchair user in the musical, the role has never been played by an actual wheelchair user. And the way the show is currently choreographed, it probably would be difficult to cast an actual wheelchair user, even if they wanted to. During the second act, Elphaba enchants Nessa's shoes. Nessa jumps up from her chair, dramatically falls down, and then begins pacing around the room because, she's evil now. Some wheelchair users can walk for short periods of time, but I would imagine quickly jumping up, doing a stunt fall, then running around 8 times a week would be incredibly taxing for many disabled actors. It is live theater, so they could certainly change that choreography to be something more accommodating, but then that actor is still left to deal with the actual content of Nessa's character, which projects a lot of harmful stereotypes about wheelchair users and disabled bodies generally. Nessa's characterization in the show is very limited. She only sings in 2 songs and is generally just not a very fleshed out character, which is not an inherently bad thing, but it does mean that the limited things we do see of Nessa are all we know about her. Nessa is introduced as a shy, sweet girl. Glinda uses her to divert Bach's attention in the first act by having him ask Nessa to the dance.
See the tragically beautiful girl, the one in the chair. It seems so unfair. We should go on a spree and not she.
Because why would anyone ask the girl in the wheelchair to the dance of their own free will? Glinda is exploiting an ableist stereotype here, but at this point in the story, Glinda is not redeemed in the narrative. We're not supposed to actually believe that her and Bach are being kind here by treating Nessa as a prop in their romantic schemes. And Nessa is aware that Bach is probably asking her out because of her chair rather than who she actually is as a person.
It's because I'm in this chair and you felt sorry for me. Well, isn't that right? No!
But this is the first act. Even if Bach asked her out initially to win brownie points with Glinda, they could have gotten a redemption of some kind, an actual love story in the second act where Bach learns from this instance. Or truly we could have gotten anything better than what we got. Nessa constantly alludes to her not being good enough or broken.
Maybe he just isn't the right one for you.
No! He's the one. It's me that's not right.
Not because of any flaws in her personality, but because she is a disabled person. And that thought is never challenged by the narrative. When Elphaba comes to visit her in the second act after Nessa has become an evil dictator and enslaved her boyfriend, hey, no one's perfect, Nessa asks why Elphaba hasn't used her powers to fix Nessa.
Not once have you ever thought to use your powers to rescue me. All of my life I've depended on you and this hideous chair.
And the solution to this is for Elphaba to enchant Nessa and rid her of her disability. Nessa thinks that this will finally make Bach love her, and he'll forget all about how she enslaved Bach and all the Munchkinland people, to which Bach says, hey, I'm ableist. I'm not that ableist. I'm actually gonna go shoot my shot with the hot girl from college I'm still not over. Not only is this an incredibly tired and reductive narrative that disabled people's sole goal in life is to assimilate and no longer be disabled, it is also entirely contradictory to the story of Wicked. Elphaba is born with green skin, which works as an allegory for a lot of things: race, sexual orientation, or even disability. Elphaba throughout the musical is taught to embrace what makes her different. Although she also initially wants to be degreenified in the beginning, soon her two lovers, Glinda and Fiyero, show her that they see beauty in her as she is, and she can too. But the one canonically disabled character just lives a sad life of self-loathing, then dies. Although this is again not a review of the movies, I haven't seen them yet, they're not out when I'm filming this, I do at least have some hope that this will be a more positive representation. Nessa in the film is actually played by a disabled actor, Marissa Bodie, and although Marissa can't spoil the film, she has said that she's happy with the changes that have been made. But since the second part won't be out until 2025, I will leave it up to the comment section of the future to determine if the movies improved on the stage depiction of Nessa. Also, it may be naive, but I do have hope that the inevitable success of the movies might encourage the stage musical to refresh some things, like some of Nessa's more problematic lines in the second act. That's the benefit of live theater. Things can change. Wicked is also very fortunate to have a fan base that not only adores it, but gives the musical more nuance than the work itself does. If nothing else, the Wicked movie has certainly brought an insane amount of product collaborations. Did you know there is a Wicked-themed macaroni and cheese that can turn either pink or green? That is absolutely diabolical. Truly, no good deed goes unpunished. Alright folks, that is all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this. I realize this is kind of different from what I've been doing lately. But you know, sometimes you just want to put on green face paint and yap about a musical from 2003 for a while. As usual, if you want to see more from me, I stream on Twitch a couple times a week and I upload the VODs of that to my second channel. I also make bonus videos over on Patreon for the people who support me over there. And I've also been doing that for a while, so I have a ton of backlog too. If you just like want more content from me and then want to cancel right after, feel free to do that. I can't stop you. But if you're not interested in any of that, if you like this video, you could feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye. Also, y'all thought that I wouldn't have Glinda? Glinda's right here. Hey, bestie. Hi. He kind of doesn't know what to do with himself with the blonde. He kind of just goes still, to be honest. But he looks great. You've never looked better, bud. He had a crown, but he didn't want to wear that, so this is kind of the best we could do. All right, we're just gonna stare into each other's eyes awkwardly for the rest of the Patreon credits. Aren't you so glad that you watched the end credits? You gotta watch the end credits, because this Goose is here in a blonde wig. And the audio is incredible. All right, Goose, you gonna whisper into my ear like the trailer? Like the poster? Don't tell Cynthia or Reva you can't see my eyes right now. Oh my god, wow. It's like an exact recreation. Isn't that kind of incredible? All right, you want to take this off? Okay.